But there will be some commitments in the communique announced tomorrow about reconciliation, a programme supported by a fund, so an Afghan-led programme with an internationally provided fund. I don't think one should overdo this idea of mediation, whether the Pakistani government will be involved, the Saudi government, other various candidates to mediate, because I don't think we're at that stage, is my own view yet. And whether we ever will be, I don't know. I'm probably personally slightly at the cautious end of this. My own view is that we should really work on that 75%, that three-quarters, if you like, of the insurgency first, and try and address all of those issues that underpin a lot of the insurgency before we necessarily need to think about a political arrangement with the core Taliban. But in the end, that's not my decision, or indeed the decision of anybody in the international community. It's a decision for the Afghans, and they'll need to make that judgment. They have their own contacts. There will be various candidates to be mediators, some from the region, some from outside. Those various candidates, I think, need to play this fairly cautiously and allow the Afghans to run with this. Where we've got ahead of the Afghan government in the past, it's gone wrong, as we know. Yes. And we mustn't make that mistake again.
Well, do you think that there is reasonable evidence that there are a substantial number, or even a faction within the Taliban, that is willing to negotiate with the Karzai government?
I think it's very difficult to tell, Nick. You see reports, some in the media, one gets occasional hints of intelligence and so on. It's just very, very difficult to tell. And of course, it's also very difficult to tell whether any feelers that are out there are genuine, or whether they're simply trying to buy time, lie low, and hope to divert people's attention. And I just simply wouldn't claim to be confident of the answer to that. And I'm very sceptical of those people who say they are.
Do you think the Afghan government itself is open to the idea of negotiating with the Taliban? I mean, the Taliban has made it clear publicly on many occasions that they will have nothing to do with Karzai, and they want to see him out of the country, etc., etc.
But I mean, I think the Afghan government is, Karzai himself, of course, has said, excuse me, on a couple of occasions, I will give safe passage even to Mullah Omar if he's willing to come and talk. Now, that inevitably has an element of political theatre and rhetoric about it, but it is sincerely meant in that he, I deal with him quite a lot, he fundamentally believes in trying to bring all the Afghans back home. He is genuinely a big tent politician, and would like peace. I mean, he sees it not as reconciliation or as a process. He sees it as he talks of peace, and it's a slightly it's a different perspective to the one that we might see it through from outside. So I think he genuinely would like that if it were available. Whether individual members of the senior leadership of the Taliban, whether the collective leadership of the Taliban think the time is right or are willing to do it, I think is, as I say, it's very difficult to tell. I'm simply not confident of what their intentions are, and I think we have to all be very cautious not to overinterpret the signals we get.
Can I just ask you, why is this conference happening now in London?
Well, as usual, there's an element of coincidence and good fortune about it. There was a strong feeling after the difficulties of the last year, not only the security issues that we've discussed, but also all of the controversy around the election and everything else, that we needed to re-inject momentum, political momentum, into this, as well as the prospect of military progress. There was a lot of talk around this idea that there could be for the first time, President Karzai's second term, we could have a conference in Kabul, and that would be a visible sign of Afghan leadership, with the international community coming in behind, and everybody supports that idea. It was also clear, however, that given the practical challenges and the difficulties of forming a government, putting together a new programme, and so on, for the second term after the election, that would take several months, and the Kabul conference will probably take place in late spring. We don't know the exact timing yet. And again, there was a general view, I think, that was too late to wait. We couldn't just allow another few months of political drift, so we needed to re-inject some political momentum, and therefore another conference in advance, putting together the international community at this stage of the year was an opportunity, as I say, to re-inject that momentum alongside what we hope will be the security progress that we'll see on the ground.
Okay, according to a leaked draft of the conference communique, which appeared in the Daily Telegraph, you may be familiar with that, British soldiers are likely to have a presence in Helmand for the next 5 years. Is that realistic?
I guess I could just simply say I never comment on leaked documents. There was a meeting today, which I wasn't at because I was in Brussels, where they were discussing with the key international partners the communique. So the communique has gone through various revisions, and I guess will come in final form, or will come out in final form tomorrow. I haven't seen the latest revision of the communique, but I've said on the record myself, I think we will have troops in combat. In those sort of combat roles for 3 to 5 years, and then we will see them move into, hopefully within that time, we'll see more and more of our troops moving into mentoring and then training roles, gradually, if you like, coming out of the front line and into almost the classroom. I think we'll have troops in Afghanistan, NATO troops in Afghanistan, and that will probably include British troops for 10 to 15 years in, the British, we sometimes use the shorthand for the British one, BMAT Afghanistan, using the old formula that we used in various places where we've had missions such as Kenya and elsewhere over many decades. And I think we will have a strong NATO presence involved in that over a decade or more. But we very much hope that within 3 to 5 years we won't have British soldiers tramping the fields of Helmand at the kind of risks that they're facing now, or indeed other NATO troops. It's important to understand that training and mentoring is not a safe job, particularly with this partnership approach that General McChrystal is now taking, which is essentially putting the troops alongside each other in operations and using that to develop the Afghan forces. So although our troops will be in a mentoring role, essentially are already, that mentoring role is still highly kinetic and very dangerous. And I think, therefore, there won't be a moment at which we'll say they're no longer fighting, they're now mentoring, and they're no longer mentoring, they're now training. That will be a spectrum through which they'll move, and we'll gradually see more and more troops, as I say, in, the ratios will change. Instead of there being 3 to 1 British troops to Afghans, it'll gradually move to 1 to 1 and then to 1 to 3, and we'll gradually, the numbers of troops that we have essentially out there patrolling will reduce, and then they'll be in safer roles over that period.
Okay, I would like to open this up now, so please indicate, and we'll start with the gentleman here.
Thank you. It's very interesting perspective you have.
You probably need to speak up a little bit.
No microphone.
You need the microphone.
Yeah, my name is Michael Story. I'm nobody. The fundamental question, though, is why? Why are we nurturing Afghanistan? I mean, I can understand why the British did it in the 19th century and why the Russians tried to do it a couple of decades ago. But having worked a little in Afghanistan myself, I cannot see strategically why it's important to us. I understand the motivation of going after Al-Qaeda in the early days, but it's turned into a sort of self-serving, self-inflaming end game, as from my perception. And I don't know why strategically is it important to your, did you say 41?
44.
44, your 44 supporters, hopefully.
Thank you.
Do you want one at a time?
Yes, for now.
A big question. And I do think it's a critical one to maintaining the cohesion of those 44. I mean, that's why, in a way, it matters, because, or one of the reasons it matters as a question, because what I think, if you look at our public opinion here, but more widely across the alliance as a whole, people very strongly support and recognise the courage and professionalism of our troops, but they aren't sure why they're there, and that, I think, is the reason why public support is weak here and has fallen. So I think it's a question we have to constantly answer.